This is WOFI in downtown Prince William, New Hampshire. We now present Live Wire with Susan Crossman.
This is Live Wire with Susan Crossman.
Good evening. This is Live Wire, and I'm Susan Crossman. Today we will be speaking with the author of the Matthias Jones series, Mr. Robert P. Fitton. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, Susan. Thanks for having me on your show.
My pleasure. I'm anxious to see what this series is all about.
Let's go.
You mentioned before the show that the Matthias Jones series can be classified as a murder mystery series of novels, but there's more than your average murder mystery in these books. So, why is the Matthias Jones series not your average murder mystery?
Jones isn't a private investigator, at least officially. He's not on the police force and he's not part of an investigative agency. Jones is the coach of 3 sports in the fictitious town of Hamilton, New Hampshire. Along the coast, 7 miles from the port of Prince William, New Hampshire, and 57 miles to Boston, Massachusetts. Yet Jones has a knack for perseverance and study of detail to connect random events. He learned this from growing up back in Indiana from his late father, investigator Bill Jones.
Yet Jones never became a professional investigator.
This is true. Bill Jones knew his son had an athletic talent, and he applied it especially to football in college. But he had an even greater ability to coach sports. His winning attitude inspired his players. Yet he was a part of many of Bill Jones's investigations as a boy when it was safe to do so.
In the first Jones book, Jones is a part of the investigation that solves his father's murder. Was the experience a springboard into other murder investigations?
Absolutely, and the FBI rewarded him with a special status because they and the local police believed that Bill Jones died of a heart attack. Let's remember he worked hand in hand with Cocoa Stefani from New Hampshire.
Coco has mob connections, correct?
Well, yes, he's cleaned up his act over the years and owns Club Max back in Prince William. But you're right, he does have Boston connections.
Jones and Coco became pretty close after that first investigation.
Yes, and there's a reason for that. Coco's brother Anthony disappeared in New York after a bad drug deal years ago. Jones fills the gap of that relationship, and Jones likes to tiptoe to the edge of the nefarious life at Club Max and beyond. It's Father Gallagher from Prince William who acts as Jones' conscience to keep him on the straight and narrow.
I sensed a tension there with Jones and the straight and narrow, but he always maintains his integrity.
He comes mighty close.
Right, and you're waiting for him to go over to the dark side.
And the reverse is true with Coco. Despite his not suffering fools gladly or his disdain for any authority figure throwing their weight around, Coco can be very charitable, especially to the church. He can become passionate about people lying, and of course, because of his brother, he's dead set against drugs.
So, Gallagher sometimes, for different reasons, referees both of them.
When they listen. And then, as Paul Harvey used to say, there's the rest of the story.
Elaborate on that, Robert.
Well, let's start with the town and the surrounds. Here's the secret. The people in the Jones stories can be divided into the normal people and the not-so-normal people. Normal in the sense that they make rational decisions, and the not-so-normal people who don't quite understand reality or are conspiratorial in their thinking about murder and everything else. Like Jersey barriers between Jones and solving the murders. First, let me say that many of my characters are individuals I met when I was on the road as a sales rep.
Did they know that?
If they did, they never said. These characters had personality traits, gestures, attitudes, and I met people along the way in my life also. I pumped up their personality traits and sprinkled in a few choice other qualities. You see characters on TV who sometimes can be modified. Finally, other characters I just made up to fit the situation.
Can you give us a voice for these individual characters?
I can do that.
Let me name some of the Jones characters, Robert, and you tell us the evolution of that character in the Jones series and what they sound like in the audiobook.
Sure.
Cocoa Stefani.
What are you, naive, Jonesy? You're gonna get us killed. Coco is a combination of 2 people I called on while working for a major U.S. company. The description and the link to certain characters is 100%, but Coco's dialogue is the other guy who talked just like Coco does in the book, with snarky witticisms and put-down lines.
Hamilton Fletcher. the patriarch of the town.
I'm Hamilton Fletcher, and I run this town. I love to make money. It's the only way to be. Hamilton Fletcher is the how the wheel of characters, with some of the bizarre characters inflaming his volatile temper. And he lives to make money and controls everything in the town. He lost his wife years ago in a traffic accident in upstate New York, and he never remarried.
Herbert Lane, the district attorney.
Stay out of this case, Jones. You're just a rinky-dink college coach. Loosely based on a DA who was always on the news and advertising for re-election. He's jealous of Jones and as much as possible tries to keep him off of cases. Jones doesn't listen to him, and Lane is a good old boy.
Courtney and Mrs. Jefferson, owners of Jefferson's Hardware.
Honestly, Mother, just leave me alone.
You're just like your father, Courtney.
Mrs. Jefferson is a loudmouth, irascible, cantankerous woman who holds her son Courtney at bay like a little puppy dog. Mrs. Jefferson is a made-up character, but Courtney is definitely someone I met during my sales career with very few changes.
Lark Larson, former coach.
Reminds me of the big blast of '53. We lost by only 4 touchdowns, Matthias. Lark's record was something like 35 and 250 in football. I made the Lark character a stingy and excitable and sometimes lady man back in the day.
George Strickland.
Wendell, get that cruiser and your girlfriend out of the beach parking lot and back to the station. Then Wendell, his deputy, which is a made-up character, says, "Just a few more minutes, George. Susie is getting restless." Strickland is normal, Wendell is girl-crazy, goofy, and his Uncle Pinky is on the state police.
Kevin Phillips, Prince William Police Department.
I'm Lieutenant Kevin Phillips, and I investigate homicides.
Phillips is someone I worked with years ago. Great guy with boyish looks and an A1 integrity.
Kip Bosco.
You don't belong on this crime scene, Coachy.
What about Jones?
Jones obviously has my voice in the audiobook, but his character developed to fit the kind of coach Hamilton Fletcher sought and Cocoa Stefani found. I wanted the tension of Club Max and the bad boy Cocoa balanced with Jones being a good guy and dutifully going to St. Bart's for church and being friends with Father Gallagher. And Jones always needs the respect of Hamilton Fletcher on a personal as well as a professional manner.
Franny McShane.
Steak and potatoes are ready, Coach. Franny is a waitress at the Colonial House restaurant in downtown Hamilton. One other thing about Jones, and it affects Jones and how he's oblivious to the fact that Franny McShane thinks the world of him. His former girlfriend Stephanie was a control freak and caused Jones to be very hesitant with Franny and the advances of the gorgeous BB from Club Max, as well as the women he dated in town.
In the first book, Stephanie would drive away most men.
Jones was different because he was wrapped up in his teams and winning and playing.
But he finally realizes he loves Franny.
I think she would have waited to her dying day for Jones. Jones, for the longest time, thinks she's just a good supporter of his teams. Another one of those tension factors that drive the plot.
Before we talk about the setting for Hamilton, bring in the 2 characters that frustrate Jones.
You must mean Bucky and Arnie. Bucky Driscoll and Arnie Dewars.
Right. Seems as though you know these 2 characters, Robert.
Hey, this guy is a certified college security cop. I'm alive to live another day.
I know where I met Bucky, not his real name, on the road. He was another salesman and very good to his customers. You'd always see him arrive with coffee and donuts. The description of Bucky is spot on to that guy. The character Bucky, however, can't seem to figure out reality, yet he thinks he's some kind of genius campus cop. And last but not least is Arnie Dewars. I saw Arnie's needling personality in different adults I knew as a kid. My uncle would needle people until they were furious, and other guys thought they were smartasses by needling all over the town where I was brought up. Must be some way of communication, but Arnie Dewars sure gets Jones upset. Arnie usually calls for Jones at the top of his voice no matter where he is. Matthias! Matthias! And his big put-off is, yeah. Those are the major characters, but there are dozens of minor characters who come and go and we just don't have time, but they can be found in the audiobooks.
You were brought up in Northeastern Massachusetts on the South Shore, about 30 miles from Boston. Is that Hamilton?
Hamilton is a composite, Susan, of many places. There are names in Easton like Pequannock, the street where my aunt and uncle lived on, but in the Jones book, it's a river. And the Hockomock Swamp is in Easton and the surrounding towns, and that is in Hamilton. I've often lived in a small town adjacent to a larger city like Brockton, Massachusetts, Northampton, Massachusetts, next to Amherst, where I went to school. So Prince William, New Hampshire, is in the next city to Hamilton, but down the coast, or over the Notch in the mountains from Hamilton. The Notch is real and is Route 116 in Amherst toward Holyoke and Chicopee. I spent a couple of semesters at Bridgewater, and the green has a semblance to Hamilton, and the football stadium is similar to the stadium in the Jones series. But the town green is definitely Amherst, Massachusetts. Yet Jones's Colonial is on the corner of the road, and Shore Road goes to the beach. There is no ocean in Amherst, and where Amherst College is on Route 9. The First Parish Church is at the other end of the green in the Jones books. And Hamilton College is northwest, just like UMass, but much smaller, of course. And the gym is about where Jones' office would be. There is no Colonial House restaurant.
Wow, that's incredible. Like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I guess it is.
When did you first get the idea to write the Jones series?
In the mid-1990s. I was 20 years out of Amherst by then, but went hiking along the Holyoke Range several times a year. The series started out completely different. I wanted to do a series because I was a huge fan of TV shows like Mannix, The Rockford Files, Magnum P.I., Harry O., Hawaii Five-O, Streets of San Francisco, Simon and Simon, Ironside, and Father Dowling, and probably some more. But my sense of humor crept into this series, and I was a fan of many of the 1960s comedies, right through Seinfeld into the 90s. And I always did imitations of my teachers growing up.
Robert P. Fitton. I feel as if we have just glanced into your creative mind. I'm Susan Crossman, and this has literally been Live Wire with author Robert P. Fitton. Robert, just a postscript. You didn't mention Franny's character development.
That is correct, Susan.
Then Franny is based on a real person?
I'm afraid the answer to that question is safely locked in the safe at the Fletcher Mansion at Fletcher Hill, north of downtown Hamilton.
Fair enough. I'm Susan Crossman, wishing everyone a good evening.